So there is a lot of data out there that's almost too obvious to be said. There's data sources that are put together by various organizations. The World Bank is one of them. The census is one of them. JPAL, the lab that I had, is one of them. We have lots of data. Almost all of the journals now, academic journals, require or at least encourage people to post their data for public access. There's, of course, lots and lots of data that exists on the web, in the wild, and can be harvested for use. There is data from Amazon, from Facebook, from LinkedIn, etc. So there is lots and lots of data out there. And of course, there is always the option to go and collect your own by interviewing people. And it's actually becoming easier and easier to do that well. So once we have all this data, is it actually useful? Is it actually data that can be harnessed to say something interesting about the world? Or is it just like a bunch of data that journalists put out there in some way that is useful or not? And of course, given what I do for a living, I would say that data is lots of good things besides plentiful. First of all, it is often beautiful. I'll show you just one example, and we'll see a lot of other examples of beautiful data in this class. Data that really lends itself very nicely to beautiful displays, network data. So the data I'm just going to show you has been harvested, so to speak, by researchers called Kim Acquaintance. He lives in Islay, and he interviewed some Somali people living in Islay, some of them very recently arriving, some of them settled in Islay for hundreds of years. And he asked them for permission to harvest their Facebook network data, something you can do with a tool called NetVis, and then put them and then visualize them using another tool called Gephi. And this is how it looks like. This is how it looks like when put together, the social network of this guy. So each round is what in social network parlance is referred to as a node. And this, it's just a person. Each little ray is a link between this person and their contacts on Facebook. So this is not this is someone who is identified as a contact. In the text that describes these pictures, he mentions that there are actually many, many links, many more among the Somalis than among other people. And he says that in part because Somalis have kind of exchanged Facebook, like each other on Facebook as a way, almost as a way of exchanging business cards. That it's actually more standard to exchange to befriend someone on Facebook than give your telephone number. And the size of the bubbles is proportional to the importance of the person in the social network. So here you can immediately ask, so there is already a lot of data here. It's not just a nice graph. You can see, for example, a person here on the top right to be quite an important person. And here you might ask immediately, well, what does important mean? How do we define even someone who is important in a social network? What would you think about? Oh, yeah.
Can we think about the degree of the node?
It could be the degree of the node, which in plain English would be?
The number of connections.
The number of connections they have. So it could be one way to do it. So how many friends someone has. Of course, it could be that someone has many friends, but those friends themselves don't have very many friends. Or it could be that someone doesn't have all that many friends. For example, the guy over there in blue, in the bottom left corner, he is important, and yet he doesn't seem to have all that many friends. So why could he be important in a network sense, despite the fact that he doesn't have many friends?
It could be that he's connected to the more important hubs.
Exactly. He could be important because he's friends with someone who are important. So maybe you're thinking that we are in danger of becoming quite circular over here, if I'm important because I have friends that are important. And of course, we are in a sense. But in in a reasoned way. If I say that I'm important because my friends are important, then it leads us to a somewhat recursive notion of importance in a network, which is very similar to how how Google used to rank pages in the early history of Google. I don't think it does anything like that anymore. Now it's much more sophisticated, which is basically you were first on the Google rank if you were linked by pages that were themselves linked by many people. And this is the same notion of importance in a network is referred to as the eigenvector centrality, which is basically this recursive notion of network, which corresponds to a nice mathematical object we can compute and has exactly this notion of recursivity. So you can see that just in this beautiful picture, we actually have lots of data. Another thing we can infer from the picture is how different parts of the networks seem to be connected together. So there is which he visualized by saying, well, the light blue guys are in one corner, and then there is the purple guys. Here's another sort of a zooming into that, into a part of the network, where he shows us what are the nature of the links that people are between with each other. So there are people who met because they're from the same hometown. There are people who took a class together. There are people who went to boarding school together. There are people who are working together. And we can also visualize that with the color and then order the data, also kind of put the nodes somewhere in the network such that these things kind of are nicely separated. So that's one example of very beautiful data.